Hi and welcome to Just a Thought. What's your image of God? What's your picture of Him? When you think of God, what do you see? Now, I'm not talking about how He looks, whether He has a big white beard, whether He's an old fellow with wrinkles, or whether He's a young, buff man. That's not what I'm talking about, because we will all have a different visual picture of God. But what I'm actually talking about is what's His character? How do you see God's character forming and being when you reflect on who God is? Many years ago, my wife, Nora, used to work for a fairly large New Zealand company as a computer programmer. Now, one of her colleagues was a professed atheist. Now, his reason for being an atheist was not based on some great scientific evidence to disprove the existence of God. No. His reason for being an atheist was based on his two flatmates. That's right, his two flatmates. Trust me, it gets worse. These two flatmates were Christians, and they decided that they wanted to convert this young man. And so they would bombard him on a regular basis with these statements. You are a worthless, pointless sinner, and you desperately need to repent. You need to accept God's amazing grace and accept His love for you, or else you're going to burn in hell for eternity. Now, this young man couldn't take that any longer. He couldn't accept a being that would, and he could definitely not love a being that on one hand would say that he loves him, and on the other hand says that if you don't love me back, I'll burn you in hell for eternity. He just couldn't balance that up. And so he rejected the picture of God that these two young Christians painted for him, and in return rejected God altogether. Now, that's tragic, but it's not an unusual story. You see, the bulk of our world today reject God on a very similar basis. They won't accept a God who would think that He could punish people for eternity, and so they walk away. And it's all because they've been shown the wrong image or the wrong picture of who God really is. In dealing with this issue, Paul writes in Colossians chapter 1, verse 15, Christ is the visible image of the invisible God. He existed before anything else was created and is supreme over all creation. See, what Paul's saying is if you really want to know who God is, if you really want to capture a glimpse of God's true character, simply look at Jesus. And the best way to do that? Read the Gospels, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John. Read all four Gospels and get a perfect picture of who Jesus really is, and in turn, who God is. See, even Jesus picked up on this same theme. When he was sitting with his disciples one night, one of the disciples, Philip, says, Lord, show us the Father. Jesus turned and said to Philip, if you've seen me, you've seen the Father. In other words, Jesus is stating that He and the Father's character are intertwined. They're exactly the same. In John chapter 17, Jesus again continually tells His disciples that He and the Father are one. They are one in purpose, one in passion, and one in all characteristics. That's a pretty amazing thing. So that's what Jesus came for. You see, I believe that Jesus most definitely came to restore the relationship between humanity and God, but He also came for another reason, which is equally as important. He came to change our perceptions of who God really is. You see, even in Jesus' day, there was a wrong image or portrait of God that was going around the people of Israel and throughout that known world. So Jesus came to show the true character of who God was. And if you read the stories in the Gospels, you find that Jesus is a God of compassion, a God of love, a God who wants to ease the burdens of those who are suffering, a God who desperately wants to accept and embrace everyone, no matter what culture, race, creed, or status. That's the kind of God I serve. That's the kind of God I love. He's not a God who wants to punish people for eternity. You know, Jesus even washed the disciples' feet that was going to betray him. That shows true love. That's the kind of God we need to portray to the world today. So your mission and my mission as Christians is that we need to reevaluate what our image of God truly is. Does our image of God match up with the image of God that we find in Jesus contained in the Gospels? If it isn't, we need to realign ourselves and go back out into the world and reflect the true image of God. It's not easy. We're imperfect humans. But if we stay close to Jesus, then we can start to reflect his love and grace to those around us. And we can at the very least share with people the true picture of God. When someone tells you, I couldn't believe in a God who burns people for eternity, you can easily respond back, well, neither do I. I don't believe that at all. Let's see what the Bible tells us about who God really is. Maybe, just maybe, that'll be an entering wedge into sharing this amazing revelation with your friends and family. May God bless you this week as you contemplate this thought about the true image of God and what are we going to do about it.